Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name's Sterling. I'm your host. We've got a few topics to cover in this episode. We're going to start in Vancouver, where they had some earthquakes and people were worried that perhaps it was going to make another San Francisco and maybe they would get good footage on their cell phone. Over to Halifax, where the city has decided to designate 6 or 7 parks in the metropolitan area to homelessness and to homeless encampments. I guess they don't want to put them out of the city, and they just don't think that people in the city want to spend any time in the parks. The First Nations Grassy Narrows has decided that they are suing the provincial government and all of the associated governments for people that are taking surveys on their land without asking their permission to enter it. Pro-Palestinian protesters are marching up and down Montreal with all kinds of tear gas was used and other forms of violence. And lastly, the University of Windsor has caved to the Hamas, and they have now decided that they're going to stop investing in Israel and only invest in Palestine and Hamas. You're going to want to stay through to the end, where I'll give you my 2 cents worth. Okay, so as I was saying, there was a 6.4 rated earthquake off the coast of British Columbia as part of what they're calling a swarm of earthquakes. 13 of them detected in July so far off the Vancouver Island, Earthquake Canada says. Now, I didn't even know we had an Earthquakes Canada, so that's an interesting title for a geological company. A series of 4 earthquakes, including one with a preliminary magnitude of 6.4, struck off the coast of Vancouver Island on Thursday morning as part of an ongoing swarm of quakes being detected off the British Columbia coast. The first and largest occurred around 8 o'clock at a depth of 10 kilometers, 183 kilometers off the coast. So appreciate that that's 5 miles down and 150 miles away. And their seismic machines would have picked it up. Of course, the region has traditionally been a very active volcanic region. There are reasons when they have these swarms. What's happening is the plate is likely slipping. And I suppose they're worried that maybe it'll turn into the one that happened in San Francisco back in 20 years ago. I don't know, or maybe they're worried that it'll throw up a big wave and wash out Vancouver Island like happened in Madagascar that time. I think that to be giving the exact times and to be saying that there's going to be a lot of drama is an attempt to get clicks. And though it is an interesting phenomenon to be sure, I'm covering it because the swarm is interesting. The swarm indicates that the plate is slipping. And one of 2 things can happen. The swarm will continue and it'll just dissipate and you won't hear about it again for another 5 years or something. Or the plate will slip a couple of inches. And then we're in for some interesting results on the west coast of Canada. But just because the cluster is there, it doesn't mean that that's where the plate will pop. It could very well pop in San Francisco yet again. It's quite large. Okay, so in this story, the new designated encampment sites for Halifax the homeless encampments are completely nuts, the Premier says. Halifax City Council's decision to choose recreation grounds in the heart of the city and a wooded South End Park as designated sites for homeless encampments is completely nuts. Following a cabinet meeting on Thursday, the Premier told reporters that the grounds, known as the Halifax Commons and the Point Pleasant Park, are busy public areas and are not appropriate places for which unhoused people should set up tents. When I saw some of the sites that the Halifax Regional Municipality had designated, I almost fell off my chair. I got to be honest with you, I agree with him. Point Pleasant Park is a tourist attraction. It's a landmark. Children go there all summer with their day camp to do things like walk up and down the beach and collect seashells. And there are boats that sail past it. It shoots out into the Atlantic Ocean. So a lot of people go there to take photographs. People get married there. This is not a place for a homeless encampment. This is not a place for people who are down and out. And I understand that people get down and out. But to say to yourself that we're going to put them in one of our largest economic generators of the area, that we're going to put it in a place where people who are not down and out now have to surrender that spot, that doesn't make any sense. There's no logic in that. It's really hard to get your head around how the Halifax Regional Municipality Council could think that these would be appropriate sites, adding that while a number of the 9 sites designated this week, 9 are nuts, the Commons and Point Pleasant stand out. And I agree with him. The Commons is, you don't want it. I mean, this is not a place for homelessness. This is a place for people to enjoy themselves. This is a place for people to spend their summer. Are you trying to keep people in the house? Is that the idea? Are you trying to surrender all of these regions to the individuals who are down and out? Is that what socialism has come to? That the people who are paying the taxes are not permitted to go to the regions that are most for entertainment and most for enjoying? Earlier this week, Halifax City Hall approved 9, 7 on the Halifax side and 2 across the harbour in Dartmouth because 4 existing designated homeless encampments are over capacity. So they already got 4. Now they're given 9 more. So there's going to be 13 that are controlled by the city, where they're going to be bringing outhouses to. So that's going to smell nice in the area, isn't it? Where people are going to be camping on tents on the grass, where children might have gone to play, who might have been able to build some memories for their summertime, but of course not now, not because the far left mayor has decided that he's going to turn all of the greatest parks into homeless encampments. The Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia says that as of last Tuesday, 1,326 people in Halifax are reported as homeless. Of these people, 916 are considered chronically homeless, which means they have been unhoused for at least 6 months over the past year and have spent a cumulative 18 months over the past 3 years. These people are absolutely already pretty far gone. Let's be straightforward. You spend 2 years out on the street, 2 of the last 3 years out on the street, you have some adjustments to be making to live back into normal society. You don't know how to get up on time. You fall asleep when you want to. You're used to a whole different lifestyle. And I'm not telling you that they don't deserve to be looked after, but I am telling you that you shouldn't be putting them right in the tourist attractions. That if you're so desperate to put people in areas, why are you not building things for them? Why are you not cutting down a couple of trees and building a new area, a region for them? Why are you not doing something other than just, well, there's a park, let's let them go to it, because the 4 that we have are full? Why is the mayor and all of the council not doing something about the fact that you already have 4 filled to capacity? And instead of approving 9 more, why are the city council not saying we need to have a house to put these guys in? Why are you not taking over the YMCA or something, taking over a gym? Like, there must be other structures, but they don't seem to care about them structures. They only seem to care about the fact that they're going to give it to it just seems very insidious to me. It doesn't seem like it's like, who voted for these people? Right? This is the question that you got to ask yourself. Nova Scotia has so far installed 19 of the 200 self-contained fiberglass shelters it promised for the province's growing number of homeless residents more than 8 months after making the pledge. Nova Scotia announced in October it would invest $7 million in 200 shelters made by the American company Pallet, with 100 of them earmarked for Halifax. Now, these are only single units. You can see the picture here. They're just for one-offs. And I can't understand why we're buying them from Americans. I am tired of spending Canadian dollars in the United States of America when we could be. Why don't they take those same people from Point Pleasant Park and put them to work to build these structures? They can build it, they can put it in place, and then they can have not only a job, but a place to stay. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And I mean, does the far left still sit around telling themselves that it's just a hiccup? That all of a sudden it's going to fix itself? Come on, man. Come on. Grassy Narrows First Nations is taking Ontario to court over the Mining Act lack of consultation on land claims. Grassy Narrows First Nations has issued a notice of application in the Ontario Supreme Court of Justice over the province's Mining Act. The legal action says the mining does not require prospectors to consult with First Nations before staking a claim on their traditional lands. The First Nations and the lawyers addressed the issue at Queen's Park. Now, I don't know when this Section 35 of the Constitution or the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. You know what? I don't care what the United Nations says. I just don't care. They're compromised. And if they're compromised, they can't be trusted, and they certainly can't be followed. They can't be trusted to lead you in the right direction. They're going to lead you in the direction that whoever compromised them wants. And there is absolutely nothing united about the United Nations. So whatever they got to say, they can keep it to themselves. This is Canada. We're going to worry about our own problems. Does that mean that I think that Indigenous individuals should be allowing prospectors to come on their land and say, "Oh, look, we found some copper, and we're going to rip it up"? And it doesn't matter that you've hunted or fished here for 50 years. No, I don't think that's right at all. I think that we should absolutely be walking in conjunction. The surveyors should absolutely be walking in conjunction with the First Nations. Do I believe that the First Nations have the right to say you're not allowed to enter this land to do any surveying? That doesn't seem really necessarily a good business sense, right? Because if the money is found on First Nations land, then the product can be sold and the First Nations can turn a profit on it, give themselves generational jobs, give themselves generational income, gives themselves some of the richest people on the face of the earth. They'll be as rich as the Dubai oil barons if they do it right. I don't agree that people should be, as prospectors, just driving onto their territory, laying claim and staking out stuff without having the express permission or a guide from whatever happens to be, like in this case, from Grassy Narrows. We got to, like, if it was your backyard, you wouldn't want somebody just walking on their backyard with their stick. You would want them to give you permission. You would want them to say, "Hey, we're coming in." They would at least have to give you some sort of notification. So I agree with this. I think that this is an overreach. I don't believe that the province should be allowing, because don't forget, like, they're taking the province to court, but it's public companies, private companies that are going in and laying claim to it. A mining company is going in there and saying, "Oh, we might be able to find gold here. We might be able to find whatever their particular mineral or metal that they're looking for." Diamonds, I suppose, is also a possibility. And I think that we absolutely need to be respectful of the First Nations territory, just like you would be respectful if it was somebody's house or somebody else's property. This is their property. You don't have the right to just march on there and say, "Oh, well, we're running a survey. We're going to be sitting out here in the middle of your territory in a trailer for the next 2 weeks." Come on, man, that ain't right. And the province absolutely has to correct that. And I'm sure that they probably tried to get them to correct it, and now they're taking them to court, and then they'll stall the whole process for 2 or 3 years. Like, the court will take its time, then the court will obviously hand down on the side of the First Nations, and then the legislation will have to be drafted, and you've stalled 5 years, which only comes back to the frustration that First Nations express when they talk about dealing with the government and how the system manipulates and the system doesn't treat them with the honor that they signed those treaties, right? It doesn't matter that they signed them 200 years ago, whatever it may be, a long time ago, or just last week. They signed them in good faith, and as a result, and because of that, people, the government, Canada, Ontario, whatever it happens to be, should be treating in good faith. CTV is reporting that tear gas was used on a pro-Palestinian and Montreal police clash. Now, I think that it's kind of interesting. The sign says "We will not stop," and the sign says "Divest now." Several hundred Hamas protesters gathered in downtown Montreal, clashing with police on Thursday night. This comes one day after McGill University hired a private security team to take down the encampment on Slower Field. Protesters gathered around 8 p.m. and began heading west on St. Catherine, being confronted by the Montreal police along the way. If you're not familiar with Montreal, St. Catherine is a major street. It's got a lot of nightlife on it. It's got a lot of industry on it. It's got a lot of business on it. And so that's kind of if they didn't have permission to go marching, and if they didn't get the permit, then obviously it looks like a hostile takeover. It looks like not so much a peaceful protest as a insurgency. Videos posted on social media show several physical altercations as police used tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the crowd. Windows at a bank were broken and reportedly smashed. Police said 2 assaults were committed against its officers. Now, you can see in this lovely photo that it says "Divest now and we will not stop." First of all, I would reiterate that if these signs are in English, these protesters are in all likelihood not from Montreal. Montreal has a lot of rules against speaking English. They absolutely have rules against English signs, English words, English computers. There's all kinds of legislation against it. I'm not exaggerating. The fact that the protesters are putting up signs that are writing them in English is kind of a giveaway to the fact that they may have been imported, that they may have been brought in from other regions of Canada, which is what people are saying is happening. There are ads running. I've seen clips where people have pulled out ads from papers and the buses will be here. You'll get paid this and we will take you to the location and that and this, that, and the other. I can't prove that, but the sign is kind of a clue. The fact that there is no Quebec flags flying. I mean, when you start taking on the system in Quebec, they always pull out their national, like they're always separatists in the crowd. It doesn't look like any here. This looks like a Palestinian flags only, which of course will turn the population against them rather rapidly. It's Quebec after all. They don't deal very well with non-secularism. So I think that this is just an attempt to cause a lot of problems. And I think that if the Montreal police or the Montreal government buckles under like they did in Windsor, then they're never going to stop. Like they say, we will not stop, but you can be stopped. There's absolutely no denying that. You can be stopped. Don't think that you can't be stopped. And if you buckle under, if you surrender to them, well, there's a reason that Palestinians are not allowed to go into Egypt. They're not allowed to go into Jordan. They're not allowed to go into Lebanon, which are all the countries that surround it. There's a reason for that. And I think that I get that they might need to come out of the war zone, but this I don't agree with. This marching up and down the street saying we're threatening people, telling me who I can and cannot invest with. Come on now. That ain't the way Canada operates. So now we go to the last and most shameful of the entire episode. Avi Benolo, the University of Windsor, shamefully caves to the anti-Israeli protesters. The agreement is signed reads that, like a script from a twisted movie where truth is evil, wrong is right, and oppressors are venerated. Now, you have to wonder in your mind, is it the staff of the university? Did they consult the employment minister, the education minister? Did they consult the government themselves, or did they just take it onto the... is it people that were hired as diversity hires that are actually sympathetic? On Thursday morning, world-famous film producer Robert Lentos sent me a cryptic email from his set in Europe saying Windsor has fallen, Hamas rules. Reading the proclamation looks like 1930s Hungary. The first Jewish laws were directed at universities. This is why my mother was not allowed to study medicine. The agreement feels like a script from a movie set in a twisted upside-down world where truth is evil, wrong is right, radicals and oppressors are venerated, skewing academic freedom. The University of Windsor has shockingly agreed not to pursue any institutional academic agreements with Israeli universities until the right of Palestinian self-determination has been realized. Despite the fact that Gaza universities have been used by Hamas to store weapons for terror attacks against Israel, the agreement calls for establishing or reestablishing institutional relationships with Palestinian universities, but not with Israeli universities. To think that this is a university that might be getting funding from the taxpayer, to say that you're not going to deal with Israel because they're Jewish and you're going to deal with Hamas because they are not Jewish, is wrong on 15 or 20 levels. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing right about it. There's nothing justifiable about it. And to think that they would be getting public money, that you would be trying to get your education from a school that has clearly lost its way. I'm not telling you that there shouldn't have been a peaceful resolution, but I am absolutely telling you that there's no way in the world that they should have caved to the protesters. Because once you start to cave, you never stop. There will always be another demand. There will always be another reason why they have to line up on the streets, and there will always be yet another capitulation. Once you begin to capitulate, they will always expect you to do more and more and more and more. This is the problem. There's no negotiation. There's no reasoning. It's simple hate. And you cannot ration hate. You cannot reason with hate. You cannot assuage hate. All you can hope to do is make the hate go somewhere else. All you can hope to do is get the people who hate you so much under control. What I do know is that the university should not be getting any public funding so long as it holds this stance. I don't want to import anybody else's war. I don't want to import anybody else's ideologies. As a Canadian, we have to all get along over here. Even though we have attempted to approach the problem peacefully. There has been no compromise. It has only been our way or no way. It has only been do it this way 100% or nothing. That's not the Canadian way. We have every religion on earth in this country. Where does it stop? Where does it end? Are we to now wait until the Buddhists picket China? Are we wait till China pickets the Buddhists? Do we wait for the Sikhs to picket the Hindus? Or do we wait for the Hindus to picket where does it end? I'll tell you where it ends. It ends where it starts. It ends right out of the gate. You have to say no, you have to mean no, and you have to put your foot down. And I would think that people who work at a university would understand the differences, would know better than to stick their nose into a conflict that has been going since before. I mean, it's only been going on since 70 AD. So that's just, 2,000 years? Oh, yeah, we're going to fix it here in Windsor, Ontario. Come on, man. You got to do better than that. I mean, this is embarrassing. And I think that if the university is getting funding from the public, that has to stop. That funding has to immediately stop. You cannot expect an individual who lives in Toronto, who might be Jewish, to give you tax dollars so that your school of Windsor, can turn around and ostracize their own cousins. See, this is the problem, right? It never ends. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.